What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch, and do we have a packed news roundup video here for you today? I know a new event has just dropped with a bunch of cosmetic items, especially for some characters that were in desperate need of them. I'm looking at you, Widowmaker, but fans on the forums have been crying out for some characters that are still needy in the skins department. Luckily though, Jeff Kaplan fills us in with where these characters are going to be headed with their upcoming threads. He says that Zarya has 2 skins in production. One is awesome, the other is beyond awesome. Good to hear, good to hear. Sombra is getting one this year. It's still a few months out though. Seems a bit more reasonable since that Sombra is the second most new hero in Overwatch. I think with a character so feisty though, it shouldn't be too difficult to find concepts that work really well for that hero. And as well, Hanzo has 3 amazing legendary skins in production right now. Question is, when? When, Kaplan? When do we get this amazing stuff? Hanzo has some of the coolest release day skins, but has got nada since. At this point, my expectations are incredibly high. He needs a Robin Hood skin, he needs a crossbow, and a getup that makes him look like Daryl from The Walking Dead, and the third one, I don't know. Surprise me with some extreme levels of memery, because we've been waiting. On a more serious note, there's been a major change put directly into competitive matchmaking right now. Win streaks and loss streaks have severely changed. Now in this post by Scott Mercer, he goes on to explain the hidden MMR system, which if you don't know, is basically the game deciphering the skill level that they believe that you should be at, which is used as sort of a ruler or yardstick to judge your performance in-game and modify the skill rating rewards and losses that you get from games that you play. Really complicated, it's a multifaceted, algebraic, mad scientist approach to defining player skill, and it has its ups and downs. One aspect of this, of course, is something that we have been very vocal about on this channel, and that's win streaks, as well as loss streaks. The system naturally wants to try to aggressively place you in the appropriate skill tier so that games are as good as possible. You don't want a player that doesn't fit at a certain rank to be there for too long because it just ruins the experience for everybody involved, either making games too easy or too difficult. However, there was a huge problem with the win and loss streak system because instead of taking individual games in isolation, it would compound the history of the most proximate games that you've played. So with that being the case, you may have just had 2 matches that were more or less fair otherwise, but you had a disconnect, and then the next game, a player who was jumping off the map because he was upset at someone's hero choice or something. These things actually happen, and then you go into like a third game where, let's say, the enemy team has more SR than you. In a natural elo system, that wouldn't be too scary for you because the punishment for losing a match such as that should be lessened because the enemy team is favored. However, with a loss streak in place, it's sort of washed out that natural stabilization effect and instead would punish you for games that you should have lost anyway. Theoretically speaking, I think it's as good a time as any to look at the manipulations that they put in place against teams, because one reason why teams were able to still rank up by matching themselves against low-ranked opposition was that win streaks were a thing. Instead of the fact of them being matched up against severely under-equipped opposition, the minimal gains that they're supposed to get weren't so minimal because they were able to keep playing them and get win streak bonuses for it. That's not right. You don't get to become the greatest basketball team in the state by playing kindergartens over and over and over again until your ranking is just so high. No, you should have to play harder and harder opponents, and if you ever have to play a team that's underpowered, it shouldn't be at great gain to you. At the same time though, they want the win streak system to exist so that it can help accelerate players who aren't appropriately placed. That's its intention. If you say have a new account, Blizzard doesn't want you to be able to beat up on players that are a lower rank than you're supposed to be playing at, so eventually, at some point, after winning so many games in a row, it wants to compound and accelerate you and boost you into ranks where you're going to have more fair matches. The major change that they made to this system though, and I'll quote Scott Mercer directly for this, his post was a bit long, so if you want his word-for-word explanation of this entire thing, it'll be linked in the description. Otherwise, I've more or less summarized it here. But the actual change that he made was that they'll be tuning the streak multiplier to be quite less aggressive. You will now need to win or lose more games in a row before any multiplier is used. and it scales up at a slower pace. So that means it kicks in slower, and it's also less severe when it does kick in. Altogether, it's just a big nerf across the board. He goes on, furthermore, we will now try to only use the multiplier in cases where the matchmaking system has some confidence that your player's MMR and skill are widely mismatched. This is an amazing point, because if you're performing adequately at your rank, but you're having the type of games that I'm describing that are more or less coin flips or unfair, multiple matches in a row in a single session, it shouldn't compound on you into this pit of despair where you start falling to your depth like, this is Sparta, and getting kicked in the chest by this win streak system. Not fun, not good. It should take multiple sessions to be able to free fall out of a rank, not one. And hopefully, if it works the way as they have described it now, that will be the case. He goes on to say, in cases of natural random streaks, you ideally shouldn't see any acceleration either up or down at all. We'll be monitoring how these changes affect overall match quality going forward and continue to adjust tuning over time to improve the fairness and quality of Overwatch matches. Thanks for the continued feedback and good luck in your matches. Excellent news. I'm very excited to see how this works, and it's something that we're going to have to monitor as a community to see we're happy with it. Now, keep in mind, this is going to take some time to go into effect. The stabilization process is going to be gradual because it's going to take you longer to rank up now. Oh, by the way, incredibly sorry if you just got on a massive loss streak. Now you're going to have to grind out of that rank slowly. It's not as easy as just going on a 5-win streak again and gaining 150 SR. So over the course of, I'm going to say, maybe a week or two, I would start to expect to see some stabilization to the ranks. This is what I desperately want. Hopefully, with any luck, with some time, individual ranks should start to have more definition to them, because it's going to be much harder to burst out of one or drop out of one. So ideally, there'll be some definitive skill sets that each rank should be able to possess, rather than having many games where it feels like a big confusion of why either team has players playing at that rank. Now, this whole MMR acceleration system ties very closely in with smurfing, because of course, as I mentioned, on new accounts, this system is supposed to try to launch players directly into the rank that they're supposed to be in as fast as possible to mitigate and minimize the amount of damage that they do getting there. Because if it takes them a very long time and they can sort of just lounge around a rank, stomping them for many, many games, it kind of ruins the experience for a lot of players. It doesn't make for competitive matchmaking, and it's not something that Blizzard wants. And I commend them for actually attempting to make this system. The system is incredibly advanced and aspirational, really. I don't know of any game that is as complex as the one that we're using here. Maybe I just don't know enough about game design, or maybe a lot of other developers aren't as open with how they judge their ranking system and how these things work out. But Overwatch is incredibly complex, and now we're finally getting into like the fine-tuning section where some of the imperfections hopefully get ironed out. But one downside that this might have is that because win streaks have less of a power and influence over where your skill rating is going to be, and thereby what rank you're playing at, it may be more difficult for smurfs to boost their way out of a lower rank, keeping them down to play with players that they shouldn't necessarily be playing with. Now, I will say this, the MMR adjustment system isn't based solely on win streaks and loss streaks. There's a ton of other metrics that we don't even really know about. We hear about them when they aren't working properly, like for instance, we know that in the past and even recently, as far as I know, certain heroes, particularly healers, but also other heroes as well, were sort of left behind in this system and not getting the appropriate level of SR that they should be getting in correlation with their MMR, or at the very least their performance in the game. On the same token, there's some heroes that potentially are getting more rank than they should. It's hard to really know, and we only really know what Blizzard tells us, because at the end of the day, only they have the ability to look inside the matrix, so to speak, to be able to see the code of how all of this works. But not to be confusing, because this post about smurfing was put up before the Scott Mercer post about the win streak system. So chronologically, this post about smurfing came first. And Jeff goes on to explain two things. One, that he's against boosting, which is why that they put so many limitations in place currently that bar one player from queuing with someone that is far below their skill level, to avoid one very skilled player propping up or boosting a player who can't get to that rank on their own. But on the other hand, he also says what is probably a controversial opinion in our community, and a bit of a hornet's nest of an issue. He goes on to say, smurfing, which as he defines above, is when an experienced player buys a second account to reset their account progress and internal MMR, and I'll add here to typically play at different characters, or sometimes just to have a more disposable account where they don't have to try as hard, so that at least have a fail-safe, like a second go, basically. Jeff says, I know this isn't what you want to hear. Smurfing isn't really that big of an issue. For example, a few weeks ago, one of the pro Overwatch players created a Smurf account and was streaming from it. We were able to watch his MMR internally and compare it against his main account. Within 15 games, the MMRs were equal. I know there's a very bad perception of smurfing, but the reality is, skilled players are moved rapidly out of lower skill situations. This is very interesting, and I think we're gonna need to do another video discussing the smurfing issue, because there's a whole ball of wax that I don't think Jeff is even addressing when he summarizes his faith in smurfing not being a problem based purely on the MMR system. I think it is fair to say that the MMR system does boost you towards a rank very quickly. We've noticed this as well, with a combination of the win streak system, which now just got a nerf coincidentally, but also the internal system. It seems to pretty quickly get a new account around the rank that your main account is. Oftentimes in our experience, for whatever reason, it's much easier to get it even beyond your main account, based on a whole host of different factors. We've covered this in another video, so I won't repeat it here. Jeff goes on to defend his neutral smurfing stance by saying, I also personally witnessed a few cases of players assuming someone is smurfing when they are not. One of the people I play with is highly skilled. He played a ton in the beta. He works on the Heroes of the Storm team and plays heroes most nights, but occasionally he comes and plays Overwatch with us because he really enjoys the game. As a result, he is a way lower level than we are. Most of us are 3 to 5 stars, and he is about level 30. Every time we group with him, someone accuses him of being a smurf, but he's not. Anyway, we'll always monitor deviant behavior, and if we feel like there is behavior occurring that hurts honest, fair players, we will take action. We are definitely working on the boosting issue. Tough talk from Big Daddy Jeff laying down the law. I'm sure you guys have a lot of thoughts on this issue. I think there's so many twists and turns to how we can discuss this that we're going to dedicate another separate video talking directly about the smurfing problem. So look out for that in your sub boxes. And hey, how are you going to make sure that you don't miss that upcoming video? You're going to want to hit subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can join the notification squad so you can see when it goes live. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. Makes me feel as happy as getting a new Hanzo skin. So if you enjoyed, please hit the thumbs up. Link in the description, you can check out our Twitch page, our Twitter, and our Discord server where you can interact with our community and find teammates to pair up with. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.